I watched a young man choose silence, because poverty had already said enough. Stay with me. I was in the hospital the day I learned how cruel poverty sounds when it's spoken out loud. Not screamed. Not argued. Not wrapped in anger or desperation. Just spoken calmly, like a rule written long before anyone in that room was born. A doctor stood at the nurse's desk, flipping through papers with the kind of focus that comes from repetition. His voice wasn't harsh. It wasn't emotional. It was controlled. Professional. Final. They haven't paid, he said. We can't continue treatment. The words didn't echo through the hallway. They didn't cause a scene. They didn't demand attention. They simply landed, heavy and unavoidable, like a weight placed directly on a family's chest. In the waiting area sat a young man named Jacob Miller, 25 years old. Shoulders slightly hunched, as if life had already trained him to expect pressure. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind of clothes you keep wearing because replacing them is no longer a priority. His eyes were tired in a way sleep doesn't fix, because exhaustion isn't always physical. Sometimes it comes from carrying responsibility without rest. Both of Jacob's parents were admitted to the hospital. His father needed urgent medical care. The kind doctors don't like to delay. The kind that becomes dangerous when postponed. His mother was in constant pain, pain that had slowly stripped her strength, pain that made even sitting upright a challenge. Jacob had already done everything a son could do. He sold his phone, cutting himself off from the world so his parents could stay connected to life. He borrowed money from friends who were barely surviving themselves, friends who gave what they could even when it hurt them. He skipped meals, convincing himself hunger was temporary while treatment was urgent. When the doctor repeated it again, calm and unmoved, "No payment, no treatment," Jacob didn't raise his voice. That was the moment that broke something inside me. Because people who still have hope argue. People who believe there's another option push back. They negotiate. They plead. They demand answers. But people who are truly out of options don't do any of that. They go quiet. Jacob stood up slowly, like his body was heavier than before. He walked into his parents' room and forced a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'll be back," he said softly. "I just need to take care of something." His mother held his hand tighter than usual, her grip weak but desperate. "Promise me," she whispered, "you won't do anything dangerous." Jacob nodded. He didn't trust his voice enough to answer. And then he left. Before I go any further, let me say this clearly. If real stories about sacrifice, family, and quiet strength matter to you, subscribe to Kind Soul Corner now. We tell the stories men don't talk about, but live every single day. Hours passed. The hospital moved the way hospitals always do, full of motion and urgency that somehow never feels personal until it is. Then something shifted. The doors at the entrance opened. 5 men walked in, all dressed in black. No noise. No conversation. Their presence alone slowed the room. Nurses paused. Patients looked up. Even the air seemed to change. At the center was a man you didn't need introduced. Not because you knew his name, but because authority doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes you just feel it. A mafia boss. He didn't raise his voice. Didn't threaten. Didn't ask questions. He placed a card on the counter and spoke with calm certainty. "Clear every unpaid bill," he said. "All of them." The staff froze, unsure if they had heard correctly. "Every patient who can't pay," he added. "Today." No speeches. No explanations. No desire for attention. Just payment. Machines turned back on. Doctors moved faster. Treatment resumed. Lives that had been paused were suddenly allowed to continue. And then, just as quietly as they arrived, the men walked out. But Jacob never came back. Days passed. Jacob's parents recovered slowly, their bodies healing while their hearts grew heavier with every unanswered question. They asked the nurses. They asked the doctors. They waited by the door. Their son didn't return. Until one night, long after hope had started to thin, the door to their small home opened. Jacob stood there, alive, thinner, changed. His mother broke down as she hugged him, hands shaking as if she needed to confirm he was real. "Where did you go?" she asked. "What did you do?" Jacob sat them down and took a breath. This time, he didn't stay silent. "I found the man," Jacob said quietly. "The one everyone's afraid of." His mother's face went pale. "You did what?" she whispered. "I made a deal," Jacob continued. "He paid every bill in that hospital. Not just yours. Everyone's." His father looked at him carefully, reading the parts his son wasn't saying. "And the price?" he asked. Jacob hesitated. "I signed a contract," he said. "For boxing." The room went still. His father's jaw tightened, emotion flickering behind years of restraint. "I never wanted that life for you," he said. "I didn't raise you to get hurt for money." Jacob nodded. "I know. But there was no other way." He explained how the training had already started, how the fights would be dangerous, how the money would keep flowing, not just for them, but for others who couldn't pay. "I'll be gone for years," Jacob said. "I don't know how long." His mother cried openly. His father stood, walked over, and hugged his son tightly. "This is what men do," his father said quietly. "They carry what others shouldn't have to." The next morning, Jacob left again. Back to the gym. Back to training. Back to a life built on pain so others could heal. Months later, when his parents were stronger, Jacob came home once more. Not to stay, but to say goodbye. "I'll come back," he promised, "when this is over." And then he left. Some sacrifices don't look heroic. They look like absence. They look like silence. They look like empty chairs and unanswered questions. But they save lives. If you're watching this and you've ever felt powerless because of money, remember this: your life has value beyond what you can afford. And if someone once disappeared so you could survive, never forget them. Like this video if this story moved you. Subscribe to Kind Soul Corner, because real stories deserve to be told. And tell me in the comments, what sacrifice do you think men are expected to make without ever being thanked for?